Eyes lit. And it's not Friday. It's actually Sunday. And this is a special edition of Untitled. I'm Malika Lee Whitney, and you're tuned to WBAI New York, 99.5 FM on your dial. I feel like she's family now. And she is going to talk to us about someone very special. Stay tuned and be surprised and rewarded. Ingrid Griffin, welcome to WBAI.
Thank you so much.
I'm so proud to have you, and please accept the fact that you are indeed wearing a crown. Tell us about your work that celebrates someone very special in our lives who lives, Shirley Chisholm.
Yes. Shirley Chisholm spoke to me, I think it's been about 5 or 6 years ago. I saw a documentary. I remember seeing her vaguely years before I saw the documentary, and I decided to research and tell her story. Why? Because I didn't know much about her. And I really wanted to know more. And I was also wondering, this woman looks so much like people I know from where I'm from.
Which is?
Guyana. And she has a very Caribbean flair, and she reminded me so much of my great aunts in Guyana who were, music teachers and having schools under the house, and she was spicy, and she was like smart and clear as a bell. And I was like, I got to find out this person's story, because I didn't see it anywhere. I can't remember hearing it in high school. I came here when I was in junior high school, 12 years old. And I can't remember studying or knowing about Shirley Chisholm's history. So I started researching, and I am now doing a solo show about Shirley Chisholm. It has about 18 characters. Her dad, her mom, a lot of men that we know, a lot of congressmen from back in the day, Ron Dellums and Thomas Russell Jones, who was a judge and assemblyman. All these men that were in her life, because she was, she broke tradition, and she was running for assemblywoman, congresswoman, and the president of the United States in 1972.
Imagine that.
I know.
Look what you have done to earn your crown. And the show goes by the name of?
Unbossed and Unbowed.
And in every way that we've ever had the blessing of seeing her presence has been a clear indication that she stood firmly for that. Returning to you, my dear, writing a solo performance presentation that has so many characters requires serious work. And you're young enough, and you have the kind of presence and enthusiasm that can certainly make that multiple number of human beings that you're going to bring forward a fun task.
It is fun.
And what makes it so?
Well, finding their mannerisms, coming up with them if I don't know who they are. But part of the research was also watching them when they're in the assembly or when they're being interviewed, and just back in the day, of course, because most of the men are no longer here, like Ron Dellums, her husband, Shirley Chisholm's husband, her dad. So it's just making those, making choices as the actor to sort of make them very specific, because I'm just one person on stage. So I want the audience to remember right away who her dad is. And so I have to pick a specific behavior, gesture. And whenever he is on in the scene, I must be presenting that. And of course, I would want to choose something that's very bold, clear, distinct. And that's exciting.
When you are developing these characters, I would imagine they're in your head at all hours of the day and night. And what's challenging in terms of that? I mean, do you have to speak to them in your thespian voice to let you have a snooze? What happens when that occurs?
It's tough. It's been tough these last couple of weeks, because I was preparing for to be part of a festival which happened this past weekend, last night and Friday night. So they were just I was consumed, and it was a good thing. I didn't sleep much.
And to be able to choose a particular frame of one's life, I would imagine those choices don't come easy because her life is so full and vast, and the impressions that she's had on community, and I'm sure the world at large, because when you take on how shall I say, you have the audacity to decide that you want to run things, folks are listening and watching. So how do you not narrow the focus, but make it expansive?
Yes, that's a great question because I've been doing so much to know a lot about her. And the show covers from 1934 through 1972. 1934, when she was 10 years old, when she came back to the U.S. She was born here in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Her parents sent her and her siblings back, her three sisters.
Two?
There were actually four of them.
No, I didn't mean two. I meant where the send her back to the place.
Yes, but it's not send her back to Barbados.
Yes, and I knew that.
Yes.
I wanted you to say it. Yes,
but she was born here, so they sent her to Barbados.
Right,
and her sisters. And when she came back to the States 7 years later, that's when my story begins. And what I decided to do was talk a lot about her personal life, which we don't really know. But I felt that getting the personal life in there would understand the public person even better and make it more interesting because I'm showing what she came from, the stock, the family, what their circumstances were. And that's what made her become who she was, those decisions she made. If you know that backstory, you understand why she became what she became.
Now, the beauty of being in this space where we can invite others to be with us live gives me an opportunity to welcome Sister Kapenzi. And I just thought you might want to have a comment or ask a question of Ingrid before we go on to other guests that will be on with us this evening on this International Working Women's Day. And you'll be able to assess affirmatively just how much we put work in. So welcome. Please, you have the opportunity to ask a question of our guest.
Oh, thank you, Malika. Oh, just to clear up one thing. As my family knows me as Frances Hansley, I am also known as Kipenzi. My question to you is, how did the research go for you? I mean, how did the research go for you?
Well, I started at the library, the Schomburg, and then I went to Brooklyn College because that was where she went to school. And they have all her records there, every single thing. So it was overwhelming, daunting. It was great because I was like, once I get all this, I could write a story. But it's, where do I begin? When do I plan for this? How long will this, because I have a life and I have 3 jobs. So it was just finding time to be there and sit for like 4 or 5 hours every time I got there and just take notes.
I'm smiling because you used a term that always makes me smile because it's always said about Caribbean people that we have 3 jobs. I used to say that all the time in Living Color, if you remember that series. So if you've just joined us, this is WBAI New York, 99.5 FM on your dial. And this is a special edition of Untitled as we are representing women at work. And we will be joined by yet another guest in a few. And she is a consultant, a programmer, a producer, and director, and her name is Isisara Bey. But we're going to ask more of you. When can folks have a look at the piece that you've developed for Shirley Chisholm?
Well, I'm excited to tell you that one show is happening on March 21st in Manhattan on the Lower East Side. The Lower East Side Girls Club. And then there's one happening on the 28th. That's also a Saturday in East Hampton, New York, at the East Hampton Library, and then I'm coming back to do more Shirley Chisholm on Bost and Unbowed at an theater on the Upper West Side, West End Theater. I'm sorry, I had to think for a bit. West End Theater in April, the first week of April.
So since I met you actually at the United Solo Performance Works some months ago, it's nice to hear that the bookings are beginning to pick up. And for you, knowing that the presidential frenzy is going on now, how is this informing the work, or has it?
It has, and it has been for some time, especially in 2018 when the congresswomen of color got into the House of Congress, the House of Representatives. It was exciting because they all talked about being, coming on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm, and they all acknowledged her, and they all took pictures of her next to, there's a portrait of her, and they took all pictures of themselves with her. So it was exciting to see that came to fruition, and it's coming to fruition even more. More is going to happen, more like that. I hope, we know. I think what happened this past week with Elizabeth Warren dropping out and all that, I felt, still not going to happen. Shirley Chisholm had said in 1972, in 25 years, a woman is going to be president. And when I saw or heard what I heard this past week, it was like, oh dear, not yet. But we're going to keep going. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. And what about, I think you mentioned to me earlier that your work is going to be seen by young audiences. So that certainly is a wonderful opportunity to bring to their attention maybe a piece of history that they may not know about.
Yeah, I think a lot of young people don't know about it. I did a reading at John Jay College, and the college students, most of them did not. And actually, they were appalled. They were saying, how come it's not in the history books? How come we don't know about Shirley Chisholm? They were actually, and it was wonderful in the sense that they felt they were cheated, and they now have a right to know, which is what my whole thing is about. We do. We have a right to know, and we need to go and find our history. We need to go and find out where it is and read about it and know it.
Does your work have an accompanying study guide for young audiences? Is that something you've considered?
That's an interesting question. I have not considered it, but I think it would be amazing. And what I'm trying to do is work with schools. So I would suggest whenever I go to schools that we create that program together.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's very necessary. Thank you so much. Thank everyone who's been with us this evening.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
You're more than welcome. That's it. That's a wrap for Untitled.